Tina, you fat lard, come get some dinner. 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 Tina, you fat lard, come get some dinner.
Because he took that deal on Kick. Now, XQC says he doesn't really understand how Kick is linked to gambling, and he also thinks...
Good morning. My name is Jamie, and I can't play guitar. And today is the Daily Hangout, June 25th. 2023. We're watching videos and hanging out. I'm pretty tired right now, but we're here to hang out. So we're going to be watching a few different videos. We're just going to jump right into it. Right now we're watching Streamers Won't Stop Arguing About Kick by Nick Is Not Green. Let's get into it right away.
That Pokimane and Hassan have like a personal grudge against him and Trainwreck TV because they led the anti-gambling conversation on Twitch last year. A lot of people during...
To catch you up, they're talking about XQC signing with Kick and just discussing generally Kick versus Twitch. Is there a difference in moral ethics, I guess, is one of the main questions. It's bizarre because Twitch is, I feel like they're on pretty equal footing. I feel like Kick is clearly, well, not clearly worse. I don't know, let's see what, right now they're talking about how Pokimane got roasted over saying that she thinks Kick is clearly worse than Twitch. And that she wouldn't go over if she was offered a lot of money.
This whole discourse tried to make it their mission to make it seem like Hassan and Pokimane have like an ulterior motive to tell people that gambling's bad, even though either of them could easily profit off of gambling and would never have to face any consequences for it. Now, I feel like they're obviously just talking about this because of how dangerous online gambling is, especially to audiences of underage kids who look up to streamers
you're
like
a
this.
stan,
But
Nick.
a shit ton of people came to XQC's defense to say that Pokimane and Hassan are...
Alright, just gonna say, the Karens of Twitch. I'm just gonna say I'm a big Hassan fan. I don't agree with everything he says. I do even think at some points, you know, runs the mouth too much. But I think he knows what his faults are, it sounds like. And I'm personally happy with like who Hassan is, and I like what Hassan does for the online community, so I think it's a net good thing. If you're not a Hassan fan, you don't have to be, but I would encourage you to try not to be a Hassan hater, because Nick is a huge fan. Nick's been on Hassan's broadcast, so he's definitely biased, but yeah, it's definitely keeps Hassan in the press being hated by so many people, but it is baffling as a fan of his why there's so much hate. But I guess, you know, before I watched him, I had no idea who he was, so there's other guys I probably have lots of hate for in a similar manner. Let's keep going.
Are like the Karens of the internet, and they really only want to talk about this so they can act like they're morally superior to those who stream on Kick. A big part of this discussion really feels like it's just people claiming that Hassan and Pokimane are grifters who want to pretend like they're progressive, but in reality, they work
actually
for a company
progressive.
that's owned by Amazon, which apparently is just as bad as Stake.com. Now, I'm not going to dive like way too into the weeds on this one, at least in this video, because there's a lot of back and forth, and I got to put this video up today.
They
but
make
let's
money
speed
from
run
Amazon.
it. XQC subtweets Pokimane yesterday by saying, flexing your morals and ethics on other people around you comes from pure insecurity, nothing else. Then Pokimane and XQC get on a call, and XQC defends his deal with Kick, saying that they are an innovator to the streaming space and a necessary competitor to Twitch. Of course, people agree that Twitch is a very bad platform, and competition is necessary in order to make Twitch grow.
So I've been thinking about streaming on Kick as well, because I have no loyalties. Fuck all sponsors. Fuck all companies. And I have only loyalty to myself and the army we are quietly building here. And you can join us on Instagram at Seriously Can't Play Guitar, and we will be building iCan'tPlayGuitar.com soon to build out a robust community for people who like to hang out in the mornings for half an hour and watch videos.
It just depends on
guitar,
whether or not Kick
or work on
is the
whatever we're
right
working on.
platform.
Again, that's why we're here. Sorry, we always do an intro. That's why we're here this morning. 30 minutes a day of guitar. This is a good excuse to do that. So I'm going to be playing guitar, working on guitar practice, and getting in my reps while we're watching videos. If you want to work on something, let us know what you're working on in the chat. Or if not, that's okay. Just watch some videos with us, say hello in the chat, and hang out. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get back to the video, and then we're going to switch to... what's after this? Who knows? We'll get to it.
To do that. And all of a sudden, we have creators on every side of the internet giving their takes on this thing, from someone like Mudahar, some ordinary gamers, to someone like Ryan Beard. And it was very surprising to see just how many creators stepped up and made the claim that Kick really isn't any worse than Twitch. I'm adding this in just because I know this is going to become a topic of discussion, but there's always people that show up whenever we start talking about the objective net good or bad of something. And I think a lot of people will come in and go, obviously Amazon is doing more bad to the world than Stake.com. And I would say, yeah, I agree. But proportionally to their size... Now, someone tweets about what Pokimane said on this stream that set so many people off and made them so angry. And Pokimane quote tweets this and says that people just want something to be mad about. This isn't really a controversial thing to say. Los Pollos TV, who is the king of debating, quote tweets this and says that Pokimane insulted an entire platform and that she's implying that she's better than Kick streamers and she's just a bitter, nasty, unpleasant person. I think it's a little dramatic to assume that people who stream on Kick are like gonna care about what Pokimane thinks of them, but you'd be surprised. A lot of people care about what she thinks about them. Then we have Austinox, who's Hassan's editor and a Twitter user that sometimes gets himself and Hassan in a lot of trouble. He quote tweets this and tells Los Pollos that Pokimane wasn't saying that. Anyone who streams on Kick is working for an illegal gambling subsidiary, selling out their audience for a cash grab. He calls them bad people and says that you're a moron if you need it explained to you that Kick is funneling viewers into gambling on Stake. Or you aren't a moron and you're just getting paid enough to pretend that you don't. Now, popular YouTuber Moist Critical, aka Charlie or Penguin Zero or whatever, comes in with a quote tweet to Oxtonox. Can't say it fast enough. He comes in with a quote tweet to Oxtonox's tweet, basically saying that it doesn't make sense to criticize Stake over Twitch and Amazon. Amazon's an evil company too, and receiving subs on Twitch directly sends money to Amazon. He says that Stake isn't technically advertised on Kick, but Amazon is advertised on Twitch. Therefore, if you stream on Twitch, you're still subjecting your viewers to Amazon.com, the e-commerce website. And this seems to be the take at the center of this whole debate. Kick funneling viewers towards unlicensed gambling crypto casino websites is not that much different from Twitch funneling viewers towards Amazon. Now, the main reason why I take issue with this opinion is mostly based off the fact that I think there is a massive, massive difference between potentially sending your viewers to an e-commerce site like Amazon that everyone and their mother uses versus sending people to a crypto casino online gambling website that underage kids have access to, and it can massively feed into very unhealthy and destructive addictions. The fact that people can't seem to find the difference between funneling your viewers into a potentially very dangerous addiction versus sending them to one of the most popular fucking websites in the world, I can't seem to wrap my brain around this opinion. Yes, Amazon is a huge piece of shit corporation. Yes, they do a lot of things that I believe infringe on human rights. But Amazon exists as a service to provide accessibility and ease of use to its users. You pay Amazon and you receive something in return. Despite the fact that there are massive problems surrounding that, there is a product to sell. On the other hand, Stake does not exist out of a need to make people's lives easier. They profit solely off of the fact that their users are losing money to their games, mostly out of an addiction to keep on gambling so they can make back the money they lost. It's fucking depressing. And Kick as a platform will not die because they have the money to buy out huge streamers like XQC, bring them onto their platform, funnel people back into Stake.com, and come out with a profit at the end of the day despite whether or not Kick actually turns any of that profit. They are willing to give you 95% of your subs because that's not their goal. Their goal isn't to make money off their subs. subs. Their goal isn't to make money off of advertisers. The goal is to make a shit load of money off of gambling, which is feeding off of people's desperation to win back money that they lost to their site. And you can put the responsibility on gambling addicts all you want, but the fucking people you watch, the Twitch streamers you're watching, are gambling addicts. You think people like XQC and Aiden Ross aren't given millions of dollars to gamble on these sites? It's because they want to win back the money. That's what the addiction is all about. But when they're getting paid to do it and the audience is not, then you are literally just subjecting your audience to losing money. And if you think that is worth it for you to jump over to Kick because maybe they have looser rules or maybe they give you more of a split on your subs, you can bring your audience over to Twitch. You're allowed to stream there. No one's going to stop you. But I think as a creator, as a streamer, it is your responsibility where you send your audience, the position that you put these people in who support your lifestyle and your career.
Yeah, for sure.
There is a crystal clear difference between the way that Kick promotes gambling versus the way that Twitch does it. You just cannot deny that fact. Kick's user base is largely made up of people who are gambling. It doesn't matter if Kick's goal is to inevitably move farther away from that. That is still the end game of how they're going to make their money. Because even if they do take a 50-50 split like Twitch does, they're still going to lose money, which is why they threw the whole thing away in the first place. The reason why it seems like sites like Kick are taking care of their streamers is because they have extra cash flow coming from the people gambling on their site. I don't know how many times I have to explain that a pipeline to online crypto gambling is worse than a pipeline to an e-commerce site that everyone in the world fucking uses. I hate Twitch, I hate Amazon, but I wish there was a better option. Kick is not the option. Now, the back and forth obviously doesn't stop there. There are hours of discussions waiting to be had between different content creators and viewers alike, but I think a lot of that debate has become pretty useless and convoluted when it comes to helping us actually understand the root of this problem and why people are upset about it. Charlie responds to Osinox saying that Stake isn't technically advertised on the site, so we shouldn't be that critical of streamers who don't stream gambling.
Charlie has
on
some
Kick.
pretty weak takes.
But again,
sometimes.
I can go to kick.com
They're not even like
and
just
click
like
on a
straight
fucking
up
chess
bad.
stream,
They're just
and
like
I
very,
still have two different
very
people
like,
on stake.com getting promoted
let
to me
people
on
do
the
whatever they
sidebar.
want.
Despite whether or not you have big
He's a
flashy
Florida man,
advertisements
for
on your
sure.
page, Kick is still a site that serves to advertise gambling to people. That is the goal. If their goal is to create a new environment that makes streamers happy, then they wouldn't spend $100 million fucking dollars on XQC. They'd actually spend it on growing a community that has a good foundation there. But that's not where the money is. The money is in gambling. It's always going to be in gambling. Now, Charlie tweet again wants to make the argument that Stake and Amazon are both bad, and we can't criticize one without criticizing the other. And I just don't agree with this stance. I think that you'd have to be very ignorant to say that Kick is making an effort to stop viewers from becoming addicted to this evil business model. And no, I don't think it's the same thing as Amazon. I don't know how else I can explain that both of these sites are bad, but Kick is miles and miles worse. And every big streamer that goes to Kick and promotes it is going to make a way bigger splash than literally any streamer going on Twitch and nobody having any idea that they're on the website. Amazon is in a position where if you are a streamer on Twitch, you practically mean nothing to Amazon, whether or not you are streaming on their website. They don't give a shit. None of that is going to change the way that Amazon does working conditions, whether or not we decide to go to a fucking platform like Kick. I truly think that people who stream on Kick just actively ignore the bad because they get to make more money, even if it's putting your audience in a dangerous position. Of course, I don't think that any...
Nick, that's the takeaway here, man. The people that are making an excuse for it have capitalism brain rot. They're saying that like you wouldn't take the money. You're making fun of anyone who would take the money by saying you wouldn't take the money and saying that like there's anything morally wrong with any money at all. So there's no dirty money, Nick. That's the point here that the internet is trying to tell you, and that if you make fun of someone for taking money for any reason, you're a bad person because money is good and taking money is good and everybody needs more money. There's no one in the world that should say they don't need more money because it's mean to people that do need more money.
The people in this story are objectively bad
you
or objectively
get what I was
good
doing
or
there,
are
right?
making a point that is objectively true or false. But make an opinion for yourself and think about something for 2 seconds before you go watch the debates online where people are just talking about bullshit for hours and hours. But I guess that's my job. I talk about bullshit for hours and hours. So I'm gonna stop this video right now because it's Friday. I want to put this video out today. But if you guys are interested in hearing me talk more about this, I definitely find this whole situation fascinating. I would like to go over more of the opinions on the whole thing. It would be fun to cover maybe some of the debates that are happening online. But let me know in the comments below. We'll see where we're at next week. Maybe we'll come back around. I am very sure that I did not get to touch on every aspect of this fight. I know there's going to be people coming into this video that are going to ask, what about this? What about that? Comment it below. I'm going to be reading the comments and maybe I'll come back and make some responses on Monday. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for watching me. I've had a lot of people show up lately on this channel. It's the best it's ever done, so welcome.
Sweet. Hey, how's it going, man?
I am very excited that you're here.
We are here. I'm excited you're here.
I also have a few other channels. They'll all be linked below. I do a lot of different things in different places, so come check it out, okay? Go check me out on Instagram at @NickIsNotGreen. I ask people questions about video ideas all the time.
He's fucking just saucing himself up, polishing his pole. All right, we've got Pinely. Let's watch What is the Plexi Sound? Or actually, how do you... yeah, What is the Plexi Sound by Retshaw.
Music, there's a few pieces of gear, a few tools that were integral to the sound and the music that was made through the early 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s. Chief among those tools, arguably, is the Marshall Plexi. This guitar amplifier is synonymous with rock and roll music from the late 60s all the way through the early 70s. So today's video, we're going to talk about the Plexi. We're going to look at what makes it tick, find out why players like Jimi Hendrix, Pete Townsend, Jimmy Page relied on this amp, and figure out what is the Plexi sound. In the early 1960s in England, rock music was exploding. It was becoming the number one form of music that was listened to across the entire nation. And burgeoning rock bands in England at the time had a major problem, which was finding gear. At the time, Fender was not really importing all that many amplifiers, and companies like Vox and Selmer were just getting off the ground. So it was really tough if you were a young, burgeoning rock band around London, England, to find amplifiers, specifically bass amplifiers. So this led to a man named Jim Marshall, who was a drummer, to open up a music store in London, England. Now initially, Marshall's shop was a drum shop, but he also started supplying local players with Vox and Selmer amplifiers, and it didn't take long for players like Pete Townsend to push them to start importing American brands like Fender and Gibson, and this is where the problem arose. They simply couldn't get enough amps from Fender to satisfy the demand of local bands at the time. So Marshall hired a few engineers and went to work on creating an amplifier of his own that he could sell out of his own shop. Now, after a handful of prototypes and testing by players like Pete Townsend, the JTM-45, Marshall's first widely available amplifier, was born, and it was adopted and hugely successful with bands around London at the time. It's worth mentioning that it was originally based off of the Fender 59 Bassman circuit, but I do want to point out that the JTM-45 is not a clone of the Bassman. This is a bit of a misnomer. It's similar, but they made some crucial changes to the circuit that make it sound and feel completely different than a Bassman.
I had a, it's a pedal, and it's like an amp simulator. It actually switches between a Bassman simulator and basically this Plexi, and it's fucking amazing because you get essentially like a super clean but amazingly full guitar on the Bassman channel, It was by, I think, Donner. It's called like the Green Channel or something. It broke. I'm so mad. If anyone thinks they can fix it, let me know in the comments or the chat. But yeah, that's definitely true, Rhett. Just from even those emulators, they knew they're very different. I think the one channel might be in JCM. No, it's a JT45. So, yeah, it's a Plexi basically. On the other channel, and that sounds like just like a really nice overdrive, which, like, if you've played pedals for a while, might sound like a super good pedal, or if you know what amp distortion sounds like amazing amp distortion, which is the best distortion.
Not long after the JTM-45 was released, Pete Townshend came back to Jim Marshall and asked for a louder amplifier. So Jim Marshall went back to work, and they came out with what would be known as the JTM-45-100. Basically, it was a JTM-45 with twice the output power. They put 2 output transformers in it, made some other changes to the circuit, and created a 100-watt amp, the first 100-watt Marshall. And this is when Jimi Hendrix enters the scene in late 1966.
Fuck yeah.
Hendrix had been playing a lot around London in early 66, filling in and making a name for himself. And it wasn't long until he got sent by Mitch Mitchell up to Jim Marshall's shop, and he put an order in for 3 JTM 45-100 full stacks. And this was the early Hendrix sound. Now, with the success of the JTM 45-100, Marshall then went to work on what we now know as the Marshall Plexi, the 100-watt super lead amplifier. Now, Plexi is not an official term for Marshall. This is something that confused me for a long time. Plexi simply refers...
So there's a few famous users of the super lead, but I'm pretty sure... I was about to say Robert DeLong, not Robert Plant. I'm pretty sure there's a guy from Led Zeppelin used it. Let's keep going.
To the type of material that's used on the front panel of Marshall amps at the time. It's a sheet of plexiglass on the front panel with all of the controls and the input jacks mounted. So when someone calls an amp a Plexi, they're referring to a Marshall amp that was made pre-1969 when they switched to the metal panel. But the true Plexi amp, the amp that everyone thinks about when you say Plexi, is the Marshall Super Lead 100. Now, the Super Lead hit the market around 1967, and it went through a few changes. And in 1968, they hit basically the holy grail of Marshall amps. This is the amp that Hendrix, Pete Townshend, Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, in his Cream years all used. This is the Plexi.
All right. Rud's just fucking in his sauce right now, man.
The popularity of the Super Lead in its time with primarily rock stars was due in part because of the sound, but it was also because of the overall power. See, in the mid to late 1960s, during live shows, as these bands got bigger and started playing bigger venues, the PAs at the time couldn't keep up. It wasn't very common for sound engineers, front of house engineers, to mic up guitar amps on top of vocals and drums and everything else because the systems just simply couldn't handle it. So guitar players needed rigs that could get over and fill out the entire venue. Hence the multiple full stacks that we see from the likes of Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton of the time. But it wasn't just the output that caused people like Jimmy Page to switch. In his anthology, he talks about why he switched from his Vox at the time to a Marshall. By the way, if you are a Zeppelin fan like me, I highly recommend picking this up. It's incredible. I'll have a link in the description box down below. But in the book, he talks about switching to his full stacks. So Jimmy says, with all the frantic touring, the road crew had started to expand. Through Peter Grant, we acquired a road manager from New Zealand called Clive Coulson. He constantly told me that I should get Marshall amplifiers, but I was happy with what I'd got and didn't want to follow the herd. The crew were getting nervous about my Vox amplifier. It felt vintage even at the time, and we wouldn't have been able to get a replacement or spare parts if anything had gone wrong with it. As it turned out, my Vox never did go down, but I replaced it all the same. First, I got a Hiwatt as an interim measure, and then I eventually went over to the Marshalls. The point was that the Marshalls were reliable. You could pick up replacements everywhere. They all sounded different to me, so I would use this as an excuse to try and stay with the equipment that I knew to be really good. But I could see Clive's point. With all the traveling around, if the Vox had ever let us down, we could have found ourselves without guitar amplification, and then where would we have been? So in the late 60s, Marshall became sort of the de facto guitar amp for a lot of the major players at the time because of the sound, because of the power, and because of the reliability and availability of the Plexi. They were just built like tanks. Now, when we think about the Marshall sound or the Plexi sound, so often you immediately go to searing lead tones, fat, punchy overdrive sounds, Les Paul into a Marshall, great sustained compression overdrive. But the reality is the reason it was so popular with players like Jimi Hendrix, for example, was because how much high headroom cleans you could get out of the amp. You have to remember, with Hendrix specifically, a lot of what he was playing at the time was clean. I mean, take Wind Cries Mary, for example. If he was playing that at a large venue, he needed to be able to get that clean or clean-ish sound at a really loud volume, hence the 100 watts. It could deliver that sound at a high volume before it started to compress and break up like other amps would. Now, this is a 4-input Marshall. We have 2 inputs for each channel. Right now, I'm going into the low input of channel 1, which is helping me get that higher headroom, clean tone. Now, the amp is set on 6, and if I was going through a cabinet in the room right now, it would be deafening myself and Chris behind the camera. But that's part of what the Plexi was supposed to do.
Absolutely peeling paint off. Fuck.
You get really punchy, clean tones. And if I change my input to the top, now we start to get into that traditional Plexi territory that we all know and love. Now, earlier I mentioned the 1968 Plexi was sort of the benchmark. It's the holy grail of Plexis. And that's because the changes that they made to the circuit in 68 are what was most popular with the players of the era. It was the right...
If you want to try a Plexi and don't want to shell out that kind of money, honestly, I feel like you can get tones like that stacking a Klon on like a pedal platform kind of amp. But you can also just go get a Plexi emulator. JHS makes a great one, and there are a billion others. I think there's one out there, a mini one that I wanted to try called the Golden Brownie. It might be a JCM 800 clone, but there's so many out there. So many really good ones, too. There's got to be almost like a pedal in a box that you can use as a front end, sort of like the... Universal Audio amp in a box things. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, unfortunately, but just wanted to chime in and say, like, there's a lot of pedals that can kind of do what that does. I think the Charlie Brown by JHS is the first one that comes to mind, and there's tons that either JHS cloned or other people did tweaks on that you can just search, like, JTM 45 pedal, and tons will come up, and you can find some on Reverb for pretty cheap. I had the bigger one. I think it was called the Charlie, not the Charlie Brown, the Angry Charlie, which I think is a JCM 800 clone, and I loved it. But I just had too many pedals and I sold it. So you can definitely get these tones without spending, or spending this kind of money on a Marshall, or having to go play through a Marshall. So check out some JTM 45 pedals. I think he'll talk about that later, though.
Balance between high headroom cleans, but it would also break up and give you really punchy, loud, searing lead tones that players like Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton were looking for at the time. Now, all Marshalls at the time were actually 2-channel amps. And it didn't take long for players to figure out that you could actually jump the 2 channels together and run them in parallel. And what this allows you to do is combine the 2 tonal characteristics of channel 1 and channel 2 to get an even more balanced sound. Channel 1 is brighter, it's more top end, more upper mid range, and it cuts more. Channel 2 is much darker with a lot more low end. In my opinion, channel 2 on a Plexi on its own is not that usable. It's too dark and too muddy. But it really comes alive when you jump the 2 channels together with a small patch cable and blend channel 2 in to give you more low end and more punch. So this is just channel 1 by itself.
Yeah, you can't always do stuff like this, but they do have like stacked pedals.
Now I'm going to jump the 2 channels together, and I'm going to blend in the volume of channel 2 to give me a little bit more low end.
Let's hear this.
Now, a key part of the Plexi sound for me is...
Oh, that's got me wanting to play. That's a rat style pedal stacked into a Klon into my amp. So here's clean, and here's this. These 2 pedals stacked. They're kind of murky, I guess, compared to rats, but.
Often referred to as the bite. Marshalls have this upper top end bite. I tend to think of it more as like a chirp. It's this kind of brilliant thing that happens right on the transient
I like
of the
the
note,
bite.
right when you pick the note off your guitar. And you can get more of it by dialing the presence control up. But to me, this is what makes a Plexi unmistakable when you hear it on a record.
It's like fizzy, kind of almost.
And even with all that gain, the
It's
Plexi
not-
still
it's not
manages
actually fizzy,
to
but it's
hold
like-
together. The bottom
yeah,
end
it's like just
is
before
not too
fizzy.
loose or too flabby, even with
It's
jumping
a
the
full
channels and bringing
fizz.
channel 2 up. And
It's
you
like a
still hear
fucking
all of
root
the
beer
intervals
foam.
in the chord. You can still hear the tonal characteristics of the chord and the guitar you're playing, even with a ton of gain dialed in like this.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite part of like the Plexi sound. Just thick ass distorted chords. Yeah, boys, we're going to get some commies and
Now, the amp we've been using today is
Just
not a vintage
CCR.
one. This is a modern reissue from Marshall. This is the 1959 HW. Now, 1959 doesn't refer to the year 1959. It's just an internal name that Marshall uses for this circuit. But in terms of modern reissues, they are true to form with the original Plexis. This is about as close as you can get. Now, this is not my amp. I'm borrowing this from my friend Rick Beato. I have one and a 412 amp on order from Marshall, but with all of the supply chain issues that everyone's having right now,
Affinity
I'm still
Beato.
waiting on mine. But you'll see one show up here on the channel eventually. This video is not sponsored by Marshall or anybody else, by the way. Now, the reality is a 100-watt amp in today's world is a lot. If you're a gigging guitar player, you definitely don't need one of these to play gigs. 100 watts is way too much for most people. The only reason I'm getting away with it here at home is because I'm using it through a load box, the aux in this case. So I can get away with the insane volumes because I'm not actually pushing a cabinet. If I were gigging with this amp, I would definitely need an attenuator. Otherwise, it would just absolutely blow everyone else on stage out of the water, at least for the gigs that I play currently. But with that said, there's something about a 100-watt amp on a 412 that is moving air in the room. There's this thing that I call the thud. It's this concussive sort of thump that happens when the amp is turned up and it's pushing a cabinet. And if you've played these amps and you've played them on gigs or been in the room before, you know what
I
I'm
haven't, but I've been in
about.
the room when people are playing them.
Intoxicating sort of thing that happens when you're moving air.
Yeah, so the air movement is this kind of like, I think is the thing that most people agree is like the one of the main things that is missing from emulators. Like I'm using a cabinet simulator when you're hearing my guitar here, so hopefully it sounds pretty good. And mostly it's my like playing that's shitty, not the tone. I'm gonna turn the mic off for 2 seconds. You'll hear a simulator. But what he's talking about is like he's playing into a cabinet simulator as well. He's not playing it into a 4x4 or big 2 4x4 stacks. He's playing it out of simulated cabinet. It might be a simulated stack, which sounds very good to us at home. But like when you're in the room with an amp, it's sort of, I think, why a lot of people like still going to shows, because there's something about having the speakers and that noise hit you. It's probably bad for your hearing, but it feels so good to just feel the amp. Bass amps too. And I think it's a musician thing, and I don't even, honestly, now that I'm talking about it, it's probably not even just a musician thing. It's just like a human thing to be like, oh, that fucking air and that powerful guitar. If you don't like it, means you're a herb and you suck. But what he's talking about is just like the sensation of having like a loud amp in the room pushing air at you. And there is something undeniably different about that than using any other kind of way to amplify your guitar, whether it's a simulator or listening to something recorded.
The other thing that happens is the guitar and the amp become one. They become sort of a symbiotic organism. The guitar is reacting to the speakers and the air moving in the room, which is then causing the amp to react with the guitar.
Dude, did you eat crystals before this?
If you've never had the opportunity to do it, I would try and figure out how to make it happen, because it's
kind of fucking with you, man, but like, what?
Amazing. So the 100-watt Plexi is a bit of a relic in that way. It was designed
we just get really high
at the time,
sit around
nowadays,
and fucking play my Plexi on 10.
Most players
I stand in front of it.
100-watt Marshall, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have one. It's a really special amp.
Rhett, do you just get like fucking rip massive tubes of like 50% THC, just massive dabs, and then you stand in front of your Marshall with an 8-stack, just fucking playing so much Led Zeppelin, just Immigrant Song over and over until your ears are bleeding. You have to go to the audiologist, the ER, Atlanta ER. It's like, Rhett, are you back again? Fucking, have you been playing your Marshall? God damn it, we told you. No Marshall after dabbing.
They're very cool. It's a huge piece of rock and roll and just music history in general. And I look forward to getting mine in the mail hopefully soon. So that is the Plexi sound. Do you own one of these amps? Are you into this kind of sound? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you want to see more of these videos, let me know what you'd like to see next in this What is the Sound series down there. You can also find links to my video courses, the tone course, the Nashville number system.
Fuck all sponsors. All right, so there's a lot of stuff here you can see. We're actually going to watch a lot of Rhett Shull later today, but we are doing, I have a lot of work to get done, but first I got to do a garage sale. So we will be back later, probably sometime this afternoon, to watch these, how the pros play chords. We tried the Custom Shop Strat. You need to hear this, the most underrated guitarist of our time, and how the pros really use overdrive. There's also the Fall of Hard Knocks by That's Good Sports, Water Tankies by Hakeem, And finally, Dream Doesn't Know How to Be Famous by Pinely. We have, like an hour or more of stuff fucking queued up for later. So come back, hang out with us. We'll see you later. We're going to go for now. And, what the hell is going on in Russia? Yeah, probably. Anyway, thank you so much for coming by. Follow us on all the platforms, Instagram, Twitch, or Facebook, wherever you like to hang out, especially Instagram, so you can keep up with us outside of streaming and be notified in our story when we go live. Or if you're on YouTube, hit that bell notification and subscribe so you can be notified when we go live. And we will see you later today. We love you. Thank you. Be well. What does Patrick CC say? Make sure you're drinking water. Have some coffee. See you later.